As I mentioned this past Friday, Vice President Kamala Harris made her first trip to the southern border since becoming vice president. Now, this was 93 days after President Biden appointed her as the border czar, and only after thousands upon thousands of illegal immigrants have already streamed into our nation at levels not seen in 2 decades. So, did she present a solution to the problem? Joining me now to talk more about this, Congressman Chip Roy of Texas. Congressman, welcome back to the program.
Hey, Tony, good to be on. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. So, long awaited, 3 months to get there. I don't know if she was walking or what, but she got there 93 days after she was appointed as the czar of the immigration crisis. What took her so long, and what did she solve while she was there?
Well, I mean, you'd have to ask her what took her so long. She obviously apparently had trouble finding the southern border on the map and find a way to get there. Once she got there, she offered no solutions. She went and had a couple of photo op kind of meetings, went to a Border Patrol facility, met with some, migrants who are at the Border Patrol facility. Well, I mean, no kidding. I mean, we've got tens of thousands of them. Went to a one port of entry, which of course has nothing to do with the crisis. And for the most part, was in and out on her way to Los Angeles. It was a pit stop, literally, in El Paso on the way to Los Angeles in order to check a box, because we've been putting pressure and heat on her. And then President Trump announced that he would be at the border on Wednesday. Now, I'm going to be proud to be down at the southern border with Texas Governor Greg Abbott, with former President Trump, and a number of my colleagues, because we all understand what's actually going on. Now, we're going to go to McAllen because, as the former president and the governor and myself and the rest of us, as we all know, that's where the crisis is. Kamala Harris, the vice president, either doesn't know or doesn't care. I think it's the latter. I think it's purposeful. And they're apparently totally fine with 700,000 apprehensions since January 1, 7,500 pounds of fentanyl, operational control of the border by terrorist organizations that are run under the names of cartels. We should designate them as the terrorists that they are. And I could go on and on about how bad the impact is on the American citizens and why this administration is completely at fault and has no solution or desire to fix it.
Congressman, you talk about the criminal activity that's taking place. I'm not talking about people who are crossing illegally. I'm talking about the drugs, the human trafficking that's taking place. And in part of her deflection, the vice president said that, she earlier went to Guatemala, went to Mexico to understand and deal with what was driving these issues. She's only talking about those who are seeking maybe economic opportunity in the country. She's not addressing the criminal aspect, the dangerous elements that are crossing the border to do harm in America.
Well, I mean, look, there's an enormous amount of crime that is going on. Talk to ranchers in South Texas. Talk to the Vargas family, who 2 years ago lost their son Jared in San Antonio. Somebody who'd been caught, released, and then ended up killing this young man, this Texan. And what a wonderful family they are. And they represent what Texans actually feel and see. And now what we've seen over the last 5 or 6 months is an escalation of what is occurring. And you've got the cartel Jalisco New Generation, which has absorbed essentially the Reynosa faction, the Gulf cartel, and the cartel del Noreste of Los Zetas. They operate more in Nuevo Laredo. And they're a really dangerous cartel who move human beings for profit. Now, listening to the vice president talk about, compassion, talk about, I'm going to go to Guatemala to understand what's going on. Look, you don't need to go to Guatemala to understand what's going on. What's going on is you and your president are putting neon signs at our border saying, come on in. Literally, they're actually putting literal signs that say asilo on a piece of paper up on trees with an arrow pointing migrants to go claim asylum in processing centers, when well over 90% of those individuals do not qualify for asylum. The fact is, and I've talked to them, Tony. I went down to the Rio Grande. I've talked to dozens, hundreds actually in the end of migrants at the Rio Grande, asked them what they're doing, why they're coming, and to a T, they all say jobs. They all talk about the economic reality of what they're dealing with in Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador. And look, I get it. I don't blame them. Most of them are wanting to come here and work. But you've got dangerous elements coming in between the ports of entry. We stopped 10 individuals who had previous records for abusing minors and sex trafficking and so forth. We've caught numerous cartel entities that are doing this for profit. We stopped somebody in the San Antonio suburbs who's an American citizen, employee of one of the cartels, moving 9 immigrants to go put them in a stash house in order to run them into the sex trafficking and human trafficking industry, which includes pornography and child and slave labor. This is happening in our country, and it's the Democrats' fault. I want to be very clear and don't beat around the bush about it.
Congressman Chip Roy, let me ask you this question, because she made this comment. The vice president said in her press conference there for her half-day trip to the border, she said, quote, "In 5 months, we've made progress. There's still more work to be done, but we've made progress." Can you help me point to the progress?
There's been literally no progress. And look, we make a lot of political shots in this town, in this game. You've been around this for a long time, Tony. You can take shots at your counterparts on the other side of the aisle. I have challenged the vice president to a debate for the better part of a month and a half. I am happy to debate her anywhere, anytime in this country, or wherever she wants to go, so long as that the American people can see her lack of answers to what this administration has done. She won't do it because average high school debate team would clean her clock, because they literally have done nothing. They have completely abandoned our Title 42 policies to stop the flow of people with communicable diseases like we have in this pandemic across our border. They have stopped the return to Mexico arrangement that the previous president had worked out. They are not enforcing any of our asylum laws the way they should be enforced, or providing the resources necessary for Border Patrol or judges to deal with that and to send a signal around the world. And as a result, we have massive amounts of fentanyl coming in, and we have people dying. The reason Ron DeSantis sent resources to help Texas, besides recognizing the importance of a secure border to a sovereign nation, is that the opioid epidemic throughout our country, including in Florida, is directly a consequence of the narcotics flowing across our southwest border. He knows it. Governor Abbott knows it. You know it. I know it. Every American knows it. But unfortunately, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden don't care. They care about partisan politics rather than the American people or the migrants who seek to come here, Tony.
So at this point, going forward, how do we fix this problem?
Well, we could fix this problem in a matter of days, literally. We could pass legislation that would fix asylum on one piece of paper in a day. We could fix catch and release with one piece of paper and pass it in a day. We could do the same thing for the other loopholes in our system. We could enforce Title 42 and have a return to Mexico program that worked. We could provide additional resources, finish the fence, secure our border, and have operational control within a year with adding those physical infrastructure that we could add to it. We could do all of that like this. It's only about having the willpower to do it. The idea that this is somehow complex is absolutely insane. You could fix our asylum laws so that people who are truly seeking asylum because they're being persecuted. Like, Tony, you and I as Christians, we don't blame the migrants who want to come here and seek a better life. We certainly want to help people who are being actually persecuted for their faith or for what they believe or whatever situation they're in politically. But that's not what this is about. This is about wide open borders, which endangers us. And importantly, as a Christian, I want to say this repeatedly, it endangers the migrants who seek to come here, the little girls getting abused, the cartels that are in power, and it endangers the American citizens who are getting whacked with an opioid epidemic and dangers now in South Texas and our ranches and elsewhere.
Final question for you, Congressman Chip Roy. Can we find bipartisan support for that?
Look, I think there's some increasing belief, particularly, look, we just saw a Republican win mayor in McAllen, Texas, for the first time in 75 years or so. We've seen Henry Cuellar, my friend, a Democrat. He and I have introduced legislation on a bipartisan basis to clear Kane and provide additional roads and infrastructure along the river. There's an interest, I think, increasingly, as we've seen many Hispanics flock to former President Trump and flock to Republican policies that are about actually securing our border. By the way, heavily Hispanic populations who want to see us do this because they understand that it matters for their communities and ours. So yes, there is hope, but not as long as you've got radical leftists running the White House, and that's what's happening right now.
All right. Well, thanks for continuing to shine a light on this, and I'd like to talk when you get back from the border later in the week.
Happy to do it, Tony, and happy to talk about any of the other issues all the time. Thanks, man.